The Detroit Tigers draft Bryce Rainer in the first round, and on day one, take 3 prep players. We're going to break it all down all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Monday, July 15th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Tigers is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rival. So check out Booking.com for your stay today. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome in, welcome all. The All-Star break is officially underway. If you're listening to this on Monday, the Home Run Derby will be this evening, so no Tigers baseball until this weekend again. We will be talking about the crazy Dodgers series that went very, very well for your Detroit Tigers later on in the week, but currently we have much more pressing issues, and that is, well, I don't know about more pressing, but we have something that's very, very big and more prevalent in the Tigers news cycle today, and that is the Major League Baseball draft, where the Tigers had 3 picks on day one. So they'll do rounds 3 through 10 on Monday afternoon, and then rounds 11 through 20 on Tuesday. But they do the first 2 rounds on a Sunday night, as well as all of the, competitive balance and compensation picks and all that jazz as well. So the Tigers walk away with 3 draft picks, and those 3 players are Bryce Rainer, Owen Hall, and Ethan Schiefelbein. Bryce Rainer was the first round pick. He was taken 11th overall by your Detroit Tigers. Is a lefty hitter that throws righty, a Harvard Westlake, California product, again, out of high school, 6'3", 195 pounds out of high school. This is a player that is really exciting. And the reason why, if you listen to the bonus episode yesterday, we didn't talk about Rainer a whole lot, was because I didn't expect him to be on the board. I expected Connor Griffin to be the prep player that maybe fell into that outside of the top 10 range. And I expected Rainer to go, honestly, not even top 10, like top 7 or 8. This is a guy who was widely considered to be one of, if not the best prep player in the draft. He was a two-way player before in high school. He was a really good pitcher, obviously was a solid hitter as well. And then this past season really went above and beyond. And that's something that a lot of people, MLB.com, Baseball America, all of the great resources we have to cover draft prospects have really made well known, is that he took a massive step forward from his junior to senior year in high school. But this is a guy who is just absolutely tooled up, a complete tool belt on him. Shortstop that can stick at short, which we'll talk about in a second, is something that we haven't had in a very long time. An absolute cannon of an arm. We talked about how he was a pitcher that pumped cheddar, right? Was into the 90s with it. So he has a cannon of an arm. Some of the highest exit velocities at one of the high school invitationals he attended as well. Has a lot of raw power. We'll talk about his bat path and kind of his swing here in a second. And he isn't slow either. I wouldn't call him a speed demon. It's not one of his higher rated attributes, but he can run. He's a pretty, at the end of the day, this dude's an athlete, like a real true athlete. We talked about the size at his age. I mean, this is a really, really athletic kid that I think has a very projectable future. So when we break it down even further, we'll talk about the offense, we'll talk about the defense, and then we'll kind of talk about overall thoughts on him. So on the hitting side of things, Rainer has a beautiful swing. I encourage you to watch some film, watch some tape on him. He changed his mechanics a little bit from his junior year to his senior year. Like a lot of prep players, he will probably change his mechanics yet again. Really, all players, not even just prep, right? Like even the college players will likely change their mechanics once they get into pro ball. But we've seen a lot of mechanical changes. That's why people take prep players, right? Is because you can get your hands on them at a younger age. and you can kind of work on their development and shape them into the players that you want at, 18, 19, instead of waiting until they're already kind of, I don't want to say stuck in their ways. Again, college players change their mechanics plenty. That's not what I'm trying to insinuate here, but you know what I mean? It's just, it's a more projectable future. And again, you can kind of get those habits going at a younger age. So I'm sure he'll change it again. He's got a little bit of a leg kick going on right now. I'm interested to see what his future is with that, considering Max Clark's mechanics have changed a ton. And one of the biggest things he had for a little bit was a huge leg kick, and then it got a little bit smaller. And now it's really, I don't want to say hit or miss, but it's just something that as he has continued to develop has been a big talking point. And so, Rainer already kind of has one. But really, if you look at the upper half, the bat path is absolutely beautiful. There was one of the mechanical changes that he had, and MLB.com talks about this a lot, was that his bat path almost got, or his swing rather, was a little bit too long at one point, and he kind of had the bat like behind the head type of thing, which is something that you want to kind of nip in the bud at an earlier age. So he has a beautiful bat path, though. I really like the swing as it stands right now, and that causes him to have the ability to hit the ball hard to all directions. Somebody at the major league level, and I'm not comparing these two players, I'm not saying his swing is anything like this, I'm strictly just comparing the fact that he has power to all fields, is Riley Green, right? Like somebody that because of the way his bat moves and the bat control, the barrel control that he has, he's able to spray the ball all directions, and that's something that Rainer at the high school level is able to do as well. Obviously, Riley Green, a prep pick too. He does not expand the zone a lot. He does not strike out a lot. It's also high school pitching. So, I mean, I'm sure he'll strike out more than he does right now by a lot once he's playing against actual professional baseball players. So that's something that is important because he's still, when compared to other prep players, he does not strike out nearly as much as a lot of other ones. But he's something that, that the mechanics and whatnot going forward is going to be a huge talking point. And we'll see if that holds once he reaches the next level. But again, like Scott Harris is big on dominating the strike zone, as we hear all the time with this organization. And this is a guy that has done that very well at the high school level. Defensively, really solid defensive shortstop. His biggest attribute is his arm, but he is not a slouch with the glove. He took big strides, again, another area in which he improved on a lot defensively this past year, but just has an absolute cannon to go along with it. Again, 6'3" as a high school, as a prep player, just an absolute athleticism and having an absolute athleticism, an absolute athlete, rather, if you will. But I think that this is a guy that if he can stick there is just going to be so unbelievably exciting, right? Like that's such an awesome profile to have if he is able to stick at shortstop. And I think there is, obviously inherently there's more of a chance he moves to shortstop once he reaches the majors. I mean, we have no clue what the major league team's going to look like when he's major league ready. But in the minors, you can absolutely expect him to develop as a shortstop. Like McGonigal, it was probably not going to stick at short anyway. I know that I've seen some people bring that up. If you think that Rainer was the best player, you weren't just going to not take him because you have McGonigal. You'll figure that out. Having two really good players is not an issue. And B, again, even on draft night, we talked about McGonigal probably not going to stick at short long-term anyways. And Rainer looks like he has a much more projectable shortstop kind of profile in his future. So again, this is an athlete with some high upside. There is some, if you're talking about the question marks, there are some questions about the contact skills, I guess we'll call it, the hit tool translating to the major league game. Again, maybe there's a slight chance that he doesn't stick at short, but there's kind of a slight chance that any shortstop at the prep level doesn't stick at short outside of, I don't know, maybe Connor Griffin, but even he could be a center fielder when it's all said and done. But as long as upside goes, this is somewhat of a weaker draft class, but this is one of the higher upsides in the top half of the first round. And that's really exciting that you're adding that to this organization. I'll be honest, I really like this pick a lot. I didn't talk about him much on the bonus show yesterday because I didn't think he'd be on the board. I didn't want to spend a ton of time on somebody that I just kind of assumed and wrote off as wasn't going to be available for the Detroit Tigers. It sounds like he's going to get over slot, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But this is an exciting player. There's always some risk with prep players, but the upside is very much there for Bryce Rainer, and I am happy and totally fine with the pick. Let's talk about the other two picks that the Tigers made on Sunday night, and then we'll give an overall kind of draft recap at the end of the show as well. We'll do all of that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at Booking.com. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities that you always secretly kind of wanted to learn more about, but maybe didn't want to say that out loud. Yes, we're talking about your rivals' cities. A Yankees fan can head to Boston and catch a ball game on Boston's turf. Look, they can watch the game, root for them to win, and then go enjoy some lobster, go enjoy their waterfront hotel. They have hotels that overlook stadiums, family-friendly resorts. Booking.com has so many choices from the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. So book today on Booking.com on the site or in the Booking.com app. Also got to talk to y'all about our friends over at Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. You can shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folk in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. So join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back tomorrow talking about day 2 of the draft, talking about some all-star stuff, some all-star break stuff with the Tigers. We'll see if we have time for the Dodger series. I want to give that a full show because it was a really great series for the Tigers. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel program for you every day, bringing you the biggest stories in sports from all of our great hosts here at Locked On, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or for free in the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Okay, so we talked about Bryce Rainer. I'm really excited. I have no issues with the pick whatsoever. I'm pretty darn pleased with it, to be completely honest with you. Let's talk about the other two players that the Tigers took in this day 1 of the draft, rather. In the second round, with the 49th overall pick, the Tigers take Owen Hall, who's a right-handed pitcher from Edmond, North Oklahoma. He is another prep player, 6'3", 185 pounds, 18-year-old Vandy commit, which will be important in a second. As far as the profile goes, this is a guy that throws gas. At 18 years old, he is touching 98 miles an hour. That is remarkable. Throughout the season, he sit more low 90, right? That kind of 92 to 94, probably closer to 91, 93 range. But has worked on his velocity. It's gone up and up and up. And again, at points has hit 98 miles an hour as an 18-year-old high schooler. That is wild. When we're talking about the secondary pitches, that is where the question marks come into play. I mean, you look on paper, you see a guy that is a prep player with that type of velocity, and you go, well, how the heck is that not a first-round pick? The secondary stuff is the question. The slider is solid at best. The curve is meh, is what I would call it based on what I've seen. And the changeup, he barely even uses. So it's barely even a fourth pitch that he has. He doesn't use it too terribly often, but this is another guy that really screams Scott Harris. Again, prep, check one, a guy that has high velocity that he is going to rely on the organization to develop the rest of, which they have done a really good job of over the last few years. And also the fastball, it fills the strike zone. He does not miss command-wise with the heater very often. Now, the secondary stuff is still, again, a question mark, not only in the terms of stuff, but in the terms of command and ability to consistently throw it in the zone as well. So I think people hear this and they think project. Most prep players outside of the first round are. That's kind of just inherently the profile of non-super high-end prep players. So I guess that's somewhat fair. But I don't know. I don't like calling like draft players projects necessarily either. Like there is an upside here. There's just also a low floor. I guess that maybe if that shares the same definition for you, then fair enough. But this kid's raw, right? Like this is a raw profile. Command of secondary, we've already talked about a bunch. That's a big question mark. The mechanics I like. This is a guy, especially when you look at when he throws his fastball. It's got great tail to it. And one of the things that everybody freaks out about is because he goes so over the top with his command, or with his mechanics rather, that the fastball has, the induced vertical break nerds of the world really, really like his fastball. So that's a plus thing, especially when you pair it with the velocity as well. This is a guy that this could end up being really, really solid. And this organization has really solid pitching player development. It's just inherently prep pitchers come with risk as well. If you're waiting for like me to talk about the draft class as a whole and kind of what I think about, the fact that we're taking a bunch of prep players and all that, I will get to all that. I'll do a complete rundown of everything. You'll hear the part that you came here for. I promise. I just want to get through all the players first and foremost. And then the third player they take is Ethan Schiefelbein. He is from Corona, California, another prep player, obviously. 6'2", 180 pounds. This is a lefty. He is a UCLA commit. This is a low 90s fastball. I think that the Tigers are banking on, just in general, prep development, like you kind of anticipate to add a few miles an hour onto any prep pitcher you take. I think that's kind of the general thought, is that you're going to be able to do that. Also, just I think continuing to grow. He is 6'2" right now, 180 pounds. They're probably planning on getting him in the weight room and bulking up a little bit more, but that's a tall frame that you can add that kind of profile to. So yeah, as far as pitch mix goes, this is kind of the polar opposite of Owen there. Ethan, by the way, taken in the comp round 2, 72nd overall. So Owen Hall was kind of the thrower that you want to turn into a pitcher, whereas Ethan, fantastic last name, by the way, I'm going to have a great time spelling that for years to come, is more of a pitcher that you want to add some stuff and some velocity onto, but can spin it. Has a 12-6 curveball. It's much more kind of like Verlander back in the day, had more of a 12-6 kind of curve. Not comparing him to Verlander. Goodness, I need to stop doing that because people... my comment section is just like, did you just compare him to Verlander? No. Okay. No, it's not what I'm doing. Really good slider that he can spin though. Solid changeup. Doesn't throw it too terribly often either. And again, the curveball, more of kind of a 12-6 action to it. Yeah. Look, again, when comparing these two, like Hall is he throws hard, so let's develop the other pitches and get him to be kind of a consistent pitcher, while Ethan is more of he has a solid baseline mix and can spin it pretty darn well and has pitched really well for Team USA over the last 2 years. So let's see if we can add some more stuff and velocity to him and get a more well-rounded product that way. 2 different approaches, 2 different prep arms, though, and 3 prep players in total, which takes us to overall thoughts on the draft. This is kind of our makeshift stuff segment here, if you will. We'll get into that right after this. Got to talk to you all about our friends over at GameTime. GameTime is the best in the business. We talk about them very often. They are also a authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes them one of the best and easiest ways to get baseball tickets this summer. They have everything you could want. Priority last minute deals where you can save up to 60% off by buying last minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, so much more. They have all in pricing as well. Toggling this feature allows you to see the total up front, no surprise fees after checkout. And then they obviously have the Game Time guarantee, where your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Excuse me. I appreciate you all for making us your first listen every day, as always. Let's talk about the overall draft as a whole. So 3 prep players is going to be the headliner here, and it's going to be what everybody talks about. This is clearly going to be the Scott Harris mindset in every draft. I think that's abundantly clear. If it wasn't last year, which we thought, maybe it's just a draft class specific thing. It's only one draft. We have 2 drafts under our belt where this dude has pretty much exclusively taking prep at the top of the draft. I don't hate it, and I know some people do, and so I want to talk about the mindset and the strategy as a whole. You just best be right, and I'm not trying to sound like, I don't know, like not intimidating is not the word I'm going for, but I'm not trying to say that there's just like a fine line and well, and like if you're wrong about everything, you suck, and like maybe that is kind of true, but like what I'm trying to say is that there is a lot more prep players have a lot more risk to them just inherently, right? They're very interesting because they always have inherently kind of a higher ceiling, but there's also absolutely the lower floor with them. Prep arms, even more specifically, are probably the biggest risk player you can take in any draft in any year. And that's why people freaked out about Jackson Jobe when it first happened, right? We took 2 prep arms in our first 3 picks in this draft. And some people, that's going to rub some people the wrong way because of the risk that is paired with them. College players, it probably is fair to call them safer, but that doesn't mean better. During the live draft stream over at Tigers Minor League Report, went like almost 5.5 hours long. I'm very, very exhausted. But over there, Chris Brown of Motor City Metrics, Tigers Minor League Report, etc., kind of pointed out during that stream, that for the people that have a big issue with taking a lot of prep players, like Avila was obsessed with taking college players, specifically like blue blood college. He loved taking SEC players and players that were from like big universities that played other big universities, and his draft classes all sucked. That's not to say that he didn't find good players in there, right? We obviously, Tarek Skubal was a college player that Al Avila took, right? Like that's not to say that he didn't find a single good player, but draft class to draft class, I mean, there's some brutal ones where you got next to nothing, dudes that are already retired from baseball in their mid or late 20s. And then you look at, the 2 of the best hitters on the team right now are Riley Green and Colt Keith, and both of those are prep players. And you look at the Angels, right? They are all about, we're going to take the college player that has that is the most major league ready right now. The Angels have been awful, even with 2 of, if not the 2 best players in baseball for most of the last 5 to 6 years. And that's been their draft strategy every single year. So I like the profiles of the guys we took, and they have a lot of tools and a lot of upside, and there's a lot of reasons to be excited, but it also is paired with risk, obviously. And I understand that, and I am portraying that. There is a lot of risk with being so prep heavy. But that there is still a lot of upside too. One of the takes I've seen that I kind of disagree with as well is that, because the Tigers are taking so many prep players, they won't be competitive, and they don't plan on being competitive for a while because the real core and kind of who they're building around is Clark and McGonigal, and now these guys, right, Rainer, and these guys that are in the lower levels of the minors and were the high school players that Harris took. And that's the real core. And they have no intention of being competitive until then. I don't think I agree with that. We've talked about that a lot over the last couple of weeks, and I have kind of alluded to something similar before. I've kind of shifted to this point where I don't think it's that is the core. I think the front office just doesn't care what the timeline is on draft night. That's kind of where I stand now. Like, I think there's a difference between those two, right? There's a difference between, the core is 5 years from now, and I'm just taking best available every single draft. I'm taking highest ceiling every single draft. And they are going to take who they believe is the best player. And again, not care how long it takes for that player or how quick they can rush that player through the system. I don't think Major League timeline is on the front office's mind on draft night. I guess that's the best way I can articulate it. And again, that's my opinion of kind of like through my eyes, what I am seeing. That's not to say I'm not in these rooms. I'm not hearing the conversations. I might be completely off base here, but that is the vibe that I get. It's not necessarily, we have to wait. It's, we just, on draft night, we're drafting for ceiling. And look, I don't think this is like some resounding, we just won the draft, oh my goodness, let's go throw a parade type of scenario here. In a perfect world, I would have liked another bat tonight on Sunday night. But I don't have anything bad to say about the players they took either, though, right? And the upside is clear with all of them. You can see the upside and you can see the future, the projectable talent with all of them, but you can also see the risk with all of them, as I've said about a million times already. And I'm okay with the risk, to be honest. And Rainer has a really, really, really high ceiling that I'm very excited about. So I'm fine with it. I'm pretty pleased with this draft. Going forward, if you want to look at the next 2 days, you're probably going to have to go under slot on a lot of these guys going forward, because it sounds like they're going over slot on all three of these dudes, right? I mean, certainly to peel the two pitchers from Vandy and UCLA respectively, I think you're going to have to go over slot. And then Rainer, heavily alluded to, I know Cody Stavenhagen said something, Evan Petzold tweeted out the quote as well. Sounds like he plans on going over slot. So I expect a lot of college bats and some arms that are probably projected as relievers going forward, because those are the guys that you can kind of get for under slot, especially if they're 4-year seniors. But they drafted a ton of preps last year as well and got away with signing, I think, just about everybody, if not everybody, too. So I'm expecting more of the same. We'll see how many they can sign this year. A player that I like kind of going forward that's still on the board, if you're looking in the college bat scene, is Dakota Jordan from Mississippi State. This is a guy that has a lot of tools and is kind of raw, which is not as common for a college player, right? You kind of want to take the higher floor guys in college. There's another big swing, but he is fast and hits bombs. And that's just such an exciting combo for me. There's big question marks about whether the hit tool, right? Whether he'll ever have a good enough batting average at the next level, but it's also why he's probably going to be a 3rd or 4th round pick is, the later you get into the draft, the more flawed the players are. That's just how drafts work. So I'm okay with taking, again, the upside that late in the draft as well. So yeah, man, like overall, I'm excited. I'm pretty pumped about Rainer. I'm fine with this draft class. Again, like I'm not like overwhelmingly, oh my goodness, they just hit the biggest home run ever, because there's a lot of risk. We're not even going to see these two pitchers pitch until next year. They will not play this year. And Rainer might not even play this year with how late the draft is these days. Who even knows if he's going to be able to play in the rookie league this year? I don't know. We'll see. That there's a couple of weeks left in that season, but we'll see. So we'll see is really my biggest takeaway. We'll see. There's a lot of upside here, a lot of risk here as well. I'm not saying this is like an A+. I'm not throwing a parade here, but we had a draft pick outside of the top 10, right? Like people are like, oh, like you had to take so-and-so. It's like, man, like you don't even have a top 10 pick. You're not getting like one of the bona fide guaranteed best players available, in this class. And with the talent that was on the board, I'm really fine with how tonight turned out. I'm excited to watch these dudes develop. And Rainer's a guy I didn't even expect to be on the board. And here he is at 11 overall, and now he's going to be a part of the Tigers organization, which is really, really exciting. Okay. As far as the Dodgers series go, we're going to recap that. I think probably 2 episodes from now, but we'll see if we have time tomorrow. We'll see kind of how the rest of the week plays out. Again, draft rounds 3 through 10 are going to be today, Monday, as you're listening to this. Then 11 through 20 are going to be Tuesday. I am the most exhausted person on the planet. I am going to go to bed. I appreciate you all greatly. Been a grind here. Draft season is always an unbelievably busy one. It got a couple of days left, but it's going to slow down a lot here. I appreciate you all greatly for sticking with me through all of the draft coverage and whatnot. I'm excited. I'm very, very much fine and pleased with how the night ended up. I hope I have, I know there's a lot of people that just are like, oh my goodness, we didn't take any college players. I hate it no matter what. I don't even care who the players are. I don't even know anything about the players. I just hate it because they're not college. I understand. I really do. I understand that patience is running thin with this fan base. I understand that you're not going to see the pitchers probably for many years. And Rainer, that's kind of a by performance basis, but I understand. I really do. But in a vacuum, these are some players that are pretty easy to get excited and intrigued about. And I think hopefully pretty early on, we will see the upside prevalent with them. Okay. Appreciate you all greatly. Whether you love or hate the draft class, I appreciate you coming here to get a breakdown of it. Agree or disagree. The continued support of this show is means a lot to me. It really does. Okay, I'm not going to get emotional. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'm going to go sleep forever. See y'all tomorrow. Go Tigers.